Textron is a Fortune 500 company that is based here in Wichita, Kansas. I was an intern as a supply chain intern, and I believe that supply chain is important because every company, whether they manufacture or produce products, they're going to have people working on their supply chain, and it's a critical piece of their company. So Wichita has been nicknamed the air capital of the world, and I got to see firsthand why it was nicknamed this, because there was many planes being built at the sites and in the plants, and these were critical into why Wichita had been coined the air capital of the world. So as I said, I was interning for Textron, and Textron is a parent company to many smaller companies. The ones you're probably familiar with, Cessna, which is here on the west side in Schulte, Kansas, and then Beechcraft, which was acquired by Textron in 2014, and when it was bought by Textron, Beechcraft had gone bankrupt, and so they bought it, and its site is on the east side on Webb and Greenwich. So Beechcraft and Cessna merged, and that was a big deal for the
attention teachers. The breakfast is still running a little bit behind, so if you can hold off a few minutes before you put your attendance in, we still have some kids trying to get through the breakfast line. Thank you.
So with these companies under Textron, there's 10,000 employees in Kansas alone. So that shows you how big of a company and business this really is in Kansas. And I got to visit 3 main sites. So Cessna, the old Cessna campus, which I said was on the west side. I spent most of my time there. They build the majority of their planes there, and they're constantly having parts shipped in, and then they build the planes at that site. I also got to go to the Beechcraft campus, which is on the east side, and that's another campus that's more focused on defense, because Beechcraft, they had planes that were focused on government work or defense work, and that was huge for their business, is having support backed by the government. Okay. And then I was at the Pawnee site, which is important in making the smaller pieces that go into making a large multi-million-dollar airplane. These smaller parts are critical. I mean, if you think about a plane, you can't even imagine how many small parts go into a plane when you think about the rivets, the bolts, the tools that you have to even make the plane. So all of those different parts have to come from different suppliers, and Pawnee is an important one that builds the parts that then goes onto the airplane. So supply chain is a critical part for not just Textron, but almost every company. And Textron alone, at the west side, they had 130 people working on their supply chain. So it's huge. They're constantly trying to improve the efficiency and the way they do things. But the 2 that I spent most of my time with was Todd McKee. He was the vice president of supply chain. He makes a lot of the calls there. He's a important part of the processes that are happening at Textron. And then Ramona Thronson was a huge help for me. I spent a lot of days watching her work with suppliers and all the different steps that they have to take to be successful within the company. And she's been a huge part for me looking to continue on this summer with various internships. And I really appreciate everything that these 2 did for me. I was going back and forth between tons of different employees, and so I'd be with different people all the time, and that gave me a great opportunity to get a wide perspective of everything, because within supply chain there's many different sectors, you could say, within the supply chain. There's people working for getting wings, tails, every part. They're kind of separated into different sectors of the supply chain. So I got to observe many things, but 4 main ones. Resource management. So resources could be just about anything, and when you're making these huge planes, there's raw materials that they're having to order, there's forgings and castings, which are an important part into making the parts that eventually are in the end product. And they have a system there that is really effective at building a schedule for when these parts need to be ordered and when they need to be shipped in and arrived, and everything has to be on a strict daily basis or they're being alerted constantly. Handling suppliers is a huge part of a supply chain manager. It's something, I mean, inevitably when you're working, there's going to be some people that can't make the due dates, and handling the suppliers when they're failing to live up to the contract that they signed. I mean, that's a huge part of their job. So that can change from maybe you have to get on a phone call, or a lot of times they drive to the manufacturer or the supplier house and they look at the process and they say, we need this to improve, what's going on. They just go from start to finish, and they find every small piece of information which can help them improve. Sourcing. So sourcing is when, say, that supplier is just not living up to their contract. They need to find a replacement because this one isn't self-sufficient. So instead of trying to just, beat a dead horse and trying to make this supplier work, you can source out the supply to a different supplier. And so they're constantly in meetings trying to find a better supplier that can give them the parts they need and good timing. And so sometimes they have to break the contract and find a new supplier, or when the contract expires, but that's an important part to staying efficient. And this was probably one of the most impressive parts of the entire internship, was just touring the site. I mean, this is a monster building, and you get to see these planes being built from start to finish, and it's an entirely different world when you can see how a plane, we get on an airplane, we just kind of take it for granted, yeah, it just flies, but when you see these small pieces that every single part is critical to keeping all the passengers alive, I mean, it's really an impressive sight. So it just walking through there, you can see each different plane because they build tons of different styles of plane, and that's just a really impressive experience that I would suggest to anybody. So I learned tons of skills through the internship process. I'd say soft skills overall was huge for me. There's many skills that I learned at this internship that even if I decide supply chain isn't for me, I'd still be able to take those and I'd be able to go anywhere, and it would have been beneficial for me. And I think that's a huge part of internship, is even if you decide that what you're looking into is not necessarily for you, you still gain from it in some way or another. I think that's a great part of the internship. Economic experience, I think just learning how the economy works and how these people are being how they were hit by COVID, and how the economy overall was just suffering from a supply chain crisis. And teamwork is something that needed to be really identified and noted, because in these teams of supply chain workers, they had to constantly be working on, this supplier needs this, that's in your sector, and they just bounce back and forth. They're constantly emailing. There's definitely a sense of urgency within the workplace, and teamwork definitely helps keep everything efficient. Time management, like I said, it's high pace. Everybody's trying to get something done, and because there's always due dates, and meeting those due dates is like their number one job, and that's what they are constantly focused on. So time management is critical. SAP is the program that they used for having their schedule built, and when these shipments need to come in, when they need to be ordered, and then when there's going to be a shortage of one material. And SAP, it's a pretty complicated and complex program, but over time I learned more about it, and it's a very powerful tool for what they're trying to do. Stress management. So it is very stressful when there's constantly due dates and you have tons of suppliers and resources that you have to get by this date, and it can be very stressful. And I watched my mentors as they dealt with their stress, and I think I learned a lot about stress management. My most memorable day, I'd say, was my first day there. Just walking in, getting to tour the site, and seeing these airplanes be built. And I've been on airplanes many times, but I never really understood. I mean, when you're walking through and you can see the small parts and the people building the planes, I think that was just a great experience. My post-secondary plans are to go to K-State University. They have an operational and supply chain management degree. It's a 4-year program, and I'm looking forward to it because I think this internship showed me that I could definitely see myself pursuing a career in this because it fits my personality. I enjoy it, and I think it's growing in demand. So I just want to say thank you to everyone involved. It was a great experience. Thank you to Ms. Burkamp for arranging all of the meetings. Thank you to the staff at Textron for allowing me to join them and learn from them. And then thank you to Ms. Shack and Mr. Stanhope. They were huge in setting up this program and allowing us to learn through the internship.